Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, lots of excitement. Not all of which I hate to tell you I could share with you, but some of which I can share with you. A lot is going on, not only in front of everybody, but behind the scenes. So without further ado, I am going to put Mickey to one side and I am going to plunge right in, because we have a lot of ground to cover today. No surprise, I'm sure, with bombs exploding everywhere. Gratis, the military hero, the ace killer. What's he called? Todger Wales. No, Todger Windsor. Oh, sorry, Oedipus Bates. A.P. Lewis says, Lady C, in the most recent issue of the Sunday Times, Roya Nicker says that, quotes, Harry's memoir, brackets, is, end of brackets, the fastest selling non-fiction book yet. Is that an accurate statement? Also, is it possible the ghostwriter dislikes Harry? More than one person has actually asked that question. So many of the stories make no sense. Harry condemns someone for doing something in one breath, then admits doing the same thing himself in another. But that's okay, because he's fine and upstanding while everyone else is horrible for doing the same thing. The inconsistency is so wild, I can't help but wonder if the ghostwriter isn't hanging him with his own words. Well, those are two questions, my dear A.P. Lewis, and I'm going to take the first one first. And I'm going to start answering it with an observation by Sharon Thembeka Jack. 1.4 million copies sold in one day. Congratulations, Prince Harry. Sharon Thembeka Jack, no disrespect, but you really must be very gullible if you believe that 1.4 million copies of that book were sold in one day. You clearly don't know how book sales are calculated. So I'm going to let you into a little secret. And while I'm doing so, I'm going to make the observation that Roya Nicker and all those other reporters who keep on parroting the official line, which is that the book has sold so well, ought to know better. The book has been for sale for some months now. It has never been on sale that I am aware of at its recommended retail price. It has been on sale for half the recommended retail price, or even better, 100% discount. I have said before, and I'm going to say again, because I know something about the publishing industry, having been a part of it since 1986. And before that, supposedly I was supposed to be a part of it since 1974, but I pulled the plug on that with Howard Kaminsky, but that's another story. So the point I'm trying to make is I've been around the block more than once. And unlike the Roya Nickers of this world, who clearly parrot the PR releases of these publishers, of course, they're in bed with them because day after tomorrow and next week they're going to have to get their cooperation for something else. Well, I'm not in bed with anybody, thank God. So I have the liberty to open my mouth and actually say things exactly as they are. That book, I told you, would be a bestseller because the calculation starts at the moment it is officially launched, which doesn't mean when the PR starts. It means when the publication date is. So it's no surprise that it's supposedly sold so well. 1.4 million copies across the English-speaking market or the international market, whichever way you calculate it, is respectable sales, but not when you consider the fact that other books have actually sold far better at full price. This book has, of course, they've given away copies. I said it, so that they being Penguin Random House, so that they could present the book as if it were this special best-selling book. And to do that, they have had to take a massive financial loss in the hope that they would end up retrieving something reputationally, and if reputation can wash onto the golden shores, something financially as well. But to say that it is the fastest non-selling fiction book yet, no, it's not. Books don't go on sale for 2 months or 3 months before the publication date, because each of those sales, including the ones that have been given away, so they're not really sales, but they are totted up as sales, each of those has been going on for several months, but the clock started ticking on, I think it was Tuesday, when the book went on sale, officially. So I hope that answers that question. Now, as for the second part of the question, which I think is a very interesting question, is it possible the ghostwriter dislikes Harry? I've never met Jarmo Ringer. I know people who know him. I've heard interesting things about him. I know he's, as I have said previously, very into the 12-step program and the whole druggy alky business. It is not the job of a ghostwriter to do anything but put the thoughts of the incompetent who requires a ghostwriter into an orderly fashion and present it in as literary a way as possible. That is the function of a ghostwriter. A ghostwriter is not a nanny. A ghostwriter doesn't have to tell you you shouldn't say that. He can if he wants. I personally think there are times when he should have. You are absolutely right. The book is littered with inconsistencies and anomalies, where Harry is on the one hand raging about people and how terrible they are because they are doing to him exactly what he is doing to someone else, but he's a wonderful person, but they're terrible. One could actually say that Jarmo Ringer is doing us a favor. He is showing Harry in all of his inglorious nakedness. Frost, nipped, todger, and all. Let's put it that way. But Harry, if he insists that things should stay in, they're gonna stay in. According to Harry, half the book had to be left out. Well, I'm not surprised because, I mean, we have a blow-by-blow description of the most mundane, everything that is so just non-remarkable is built up into something phantasmagoric. So, is J.R. Mowringer letting him hang himself with his own words? He's letting him hang himself with his own thoughts that J.R. Mowringer has put into his J.R. Mowringer's words. Whether he likes him or not, I have absolutely no idea. But I would say an awful lot of what is being claimed, including the tremendous success of the book in terms of sales, is as true as the frost nip story. Because I have spoken to medical people about the frost nip story. Harry claims that his todger started to act up after he was back here. Except that frost nip is the first stage of frostbite, and both frost nip and frostbite happen immediately. There's not a delayed reaction. You are aware of the problem as soon as it takes place, evidently. So, is this a fanciful Harry story? Well, actually, I gather that there are other reasons for why Harry's todger could have ended up having the symptoms he did. Now, hang on a second. let me do it like this. Maybe somebody had the sniffles, and maybe sniffles the cold, because of course, actually, why shouldn't I say it? The cocaine. It could have been cocaine or some other drug that ended up on his todger. That's also a symptom. And that also causes the problem. So it could have been a drug. And since Harry's book is littered with drug taking, brazenly stating that when he is even on official duties, he's busy doing drugs in countries where it is illegal. So that shows the total contempt that he not only had for the laws and decorous behavior, it also shows the arrogance of the man to actually be broadcasting his contempt for the law and his hosts. Because when he's abroad, he is doing this, doing that, doing the other, taking weed in Lesotho, which at the time was totally illegal. I just make those points for what they're worth. Andres de Muller says, congratulations for your sharp and courageous remarks on both Harry and Meghan's mental issues, narcissism, impulsiveness, etc. However, I would like to ask you if you think there is a possible source of redemption for these two having reached that level of blindness and arrogance. Is it a fact that Prince Harry has been treated... It is a fact that Prince Harry has been treated by quite a few psychologists in the past, sadly to no avail. Do you think psychological treatment is useful at all with these sorts of personality disorders, borderline, paranoid, etc.? You expose the problem brilliantly, but can you envisage a solution that ideally would lead to redemption? Thank you. Well, I'm going to start out with what his sister-in-law Catherine said the other day. Talking therapy doesn't work with everyone. That's the first thing. And it clearly hasn't worked with him. As for general therapy, if your brains have been fried by drugs, it's a very difficult solution for a therapist to achieve, to get you to the realization that you have fried your brains and therefore your perceptions are defective. If you have narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, funnily enough, is far more treatable than narcissistic personality disorder, if only because the suffering that the person who has borderline personality disorder has to endure makes it incentivizes them to actually seek a real solution. People with narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, or if they are on the spectrum, let me put it like that, they suffer from character flaws. They suffer from moral deficiencies. These are, as they would put it in AA, spiritual diseases. That's right. They suffer from stinking thinking, and unless they are prepared to be humble enough to accept that they are not perfect, there is no possibility of redemption. None whatsoever. What they do is use the tools of therapy to screw you. That's what they do with the tools of therapy. So actually, in a funny sort of way, it is better for us, the victims of people like that, if they have no therapy. Because if they have therapy, they go and burrow under the surface more effectively. And since they are equally damaged and dangerous as they were before, they actually, once they are subterranean, they do far more harm. It's like an underwater stream under your house of water, and you don't know it's there until one day you walk on the tiles and everything collapses because the underwater stream has been eating away the foundations of the house. I'm afraid I can't be more optimistic than that. I have rather too much experience where this sort of thing is concerned. My mother, my ex-husband, my late brother-in-law, the 12th Duke of Argyll. No, there is no redemption for people like that. And the only redemption we, their victims, can have is to face what we are up against and deal with it accordingly. Anything else is pointless. I can't be more optimistic than that, I'm afraid. You know, if you have a gangrenous leg and you go to the doctor and he says, oh, well, let's watch and see as it's creeping up, instead of saying, cut it off. Well, even Jesus Christ said, if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out. Every now and then, radical measures are called for. Julie Cousins says, Lady C, hope you're well. Thank you. Just a thought. Regarding the news the King wants a face-to-face meeting with Harry before May. Do you think this is a bit of blackmail pressure from Harry after what he said yesterday about he knows more that would be very detrimental to both the King and William and could write more books? And do you think the face-to-face will include Meghan? I'm feeling this is not good. And frankly, I don't think the UK and the palace will want this. What do you think? I'm sure in a family it would be desirable, but this is far beyond a family disagreement. Excellent question. I'm going to answer this very carefully because this is a very incendiary matter. The royal family has been put into a virtually impossible predicament by Harry, who is totally disloyal and treacherous and a traitor to his family and to this country and the Commonwealth. I speak as a citizen of 2 Commonwealth countries, of which the King is head of state. And I have to tell you, if Harry thinks I'm being unfair, sue me, you little sod, and I'll see you in court. His behavior is reprehensible. Judas had the decency to betray Christ but once. Harry is a perpetual traitor, and not only that, a sanctimonious traitor at the same time, justifying his betrayals with sanctimony which does not stand up to examination. Now, I know Harry's type. My mother was that type. I used to say, Mummy never ever committed a dirty deed that she didn't pretend to have a noble motive for. Harry does the same thing. He makes hypocrites look honourable. That's how bad he is. What my own take on this, and I'm going to put this totally on myself, is that the family has no option but to take one of 2 lines. They can be conciliatory or they can be harsh, and they can say enough is enough. If they take the latter course, they know that will bring down more abuse upon their heads and upon the heads of this country and the Commonwealth. And this is not just a family issue, as you have rightly observed. This is also a national issue and a Commonwealth issue and an international issue. It's not just about the family. It is about the royal family. They need to protect the interests of this nation, the other nations which are involved. 56 nations are involved. There are 56 nations in the Commonwealth at the moment. 56. If you stop to think of it, at least a quarter or a third of the world's population is being affected if this matter is not handled properly. Of course, they need to be very careful what they do. Everybody is hoping that despite a show of conciliation, hot-head, brain-dead Oedipus Bates will continue to fulminate and not show up. The solution, because you see, Harry has made it absolutely clear that he and Meghan expect unconditional surrender. I mean, they, my dear, are the allies, and the royal family and the British people and the British press are the Nazis. We need to be crushed. And if we aren't crushed and we are shown any mercy whatsoever, they will have lost the war, which a war that Harry has stated in his book is to him a sacred war. We're dealing with fanatics and delusional messiahs, misguided messiahs. So there is no simple, straightforward answer to a complex situation with conflicting issues. It's almost a case of if you do, you die, if you don't, you die as well. It's not exactly that. And I cannot say more than this. It wouldn't be right, and my first responsibility has to be the principles behind a lot of this. I hope that answers the question. Mary Linda Galeful says, is this really what we all have come to? There has never been a time in my 70 years that I have seen society failing and failing so badly. It's extremely disturbing to watch these antics and the real mental health crisis he is going through. I would be interested if you think he has gotten involved with a cult. Well, Mary Linda Galeful, that's a very interesting question. You actually cover a lot of ground in it. So I'm going to narrow it down to basically the question part of it. Because I could actually, if I cover some of the terrain that you have touched upon briefly before narrowing it down, you will see why I need to narrow it down. Society is in huge conflict at this stage. But remember, more people are better off than they have ever been in the whole of the history of humanity and have greater freedoms than ever. That is not to say that our civil liberties are not being threatened. They are being assailed from many very dangerous quarters. It is deeply disturbing that our civil liberties are endangered by some of the very organs that are in place to preserve them. I would include significant segments of the mainstream press in this observation. I would also include the inaccuracies, the dangerous inaccuracies, the misleading inaccuracies that the royal knickers of this world, who are supposed to be reputable and reliable, and she is one of the better royal correspondents, I may add, but she comes out with sloppy things like the book is the fastest selling book of all time, non-fiction, without considering the fact that it's been on sale for 2.5 months or however long it's been on sale for. So right there, it's misleading. So I just make that, and this is just an observation of one little point, but it happens every day. And it is very dangerous. People need to be precise. They need to not, everybody can make mistakes. I'm not saying people don't make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But to be sloppy, no. Especially when you are presenting ideas and facts that could impact upon the civil liberties of nations. It's a serious matter. Okay, so to narrow it down. Yes, it is obvious to anybody who is not brain dead that Harry has real mental problems and that his perspective is skewed, to put it mildly, and that he has a very irrational way of looking at things, and he doesn't even connect the dots to see where his irrationality is markedly inconsistent and therefore undermining the points he's trying to make. Do I think he's gotten involved with a cult? Yes, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. Harry is the number one follower of the Meghan Markle cult. I've said it before, repeatedly, over the however long I've been doing these programs. She thinks she's the Delphic Oracle, and he thinks she's the Delphic Oracle. I am going off at this point the hypothesis or the premise that they are still together. I am going off what he is saying. I'm not addressing the behind the scenes issues as to the state of their marriage. First of all, there is nothing Harry or Meghan could tell me, including the day of the week, that I would believe without checking. And the information about the state of their marriage has to emanate in some degree from people close to them. And Harry and Meghan are ace operators who believe in laying down false trails and creating deceptive scenarios. The Queen put it, the late Queen, not the present Queen, the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, put it rather gently when she said that she thought Harry was over in love with Meghan. That's just the beginning of it. You can be over in love with somebody, and if they are not ominous if they are not messianic, if they don't seek to occupy your heart and soul and create an Iago situation, you will not derail to the extent that Harry has derailed. Harry has given us many clues as to the fact that he is the chief follower of the Meghan cult. I didn't realise that I was trapped until Maxie baby pointed it out to me. I didn't realise I was unhappy until Maxie baby pointed it out to me. I didn't realise XYZ ABC until Maxie baby pointed it out to me. Thank you, Meg. Thank you so much for pointing it out to me. I wonder what Laurence Olivier would make of the role of Harry being Othello to Meghan's Iago. And Desdemona, my dear, is the royal family and the rest of us. And let's remember how that one ended. Lane Andrews says, who doesn't remember where they were when they heard a beloved relative died? Harry was on a ski holiday in Switzerland with his father and brother when they heard the Queen Mother had died. And of course, Charles was very upset on hearing of his grandmother's passing. Instead of Harry admitting he heard the news from his father on their shared vacation, he writes that he was alone and told by a courtier. It's either a lie meant to portray himself as a sad little victim of a distant family, or what little brain he had and his memory are totally fried from drug use. Lane Andrews, it's a combination. You know, both Harry and Meghan have serious difficulties with recollections. Both of them remember things that never happened and distort things that happened so that you are the bad guy and they are the good guy, even though they're the ones with their hand in your pocket. And you are a wicked person to say, oh, get your hand out of my pocket. Lydia SCL says, the disclaimer by the ghostwriter and Prince Harry is just another way of saying recollections may vary. No, my dear Lydia SCL, lovely as your comment is, it doesn't go far enough in my opinion. Their disclaimer is that recollections do vary, and that when you point out to them that their account deviates from the facts, you are being unreasonable because their version of the facts is their truth, and therefore we should swallow the lie whole. So, but you see how clever the Queen and Sir Edward Young were when they said recollections may vary, because everybody knows that Harry, like all disturbed people who have problems with perception and with absorbing reality to the extent that it approximates with other people's viewpoint and recollection of an incident. Harry, like all of these people, has a disconnection from reality, and therefore their recall is fictional. It is maybe 2% accurate, 98% inaccurate, but they expect us to accept their 98% inaccuracy as total 100% fact. Do you see the dichotomy? Do you see the perpetual struggle people with such disordered perceptions have as they go through life, trying to batter all of us into submission with their viewpoint, which does not accord with the reality of the situation? This is one of the problems of dealing with mad people. There is no agreement with them as to what happened, because they are determined to cram their perceptions down our throats. Make no mistake about it. The Harrys and my mothers of this world are bullies. They are bullies who want to actually get in your head, use an egg beater, scramble our brains, I should say, and then trip off because they regard their right to alter our perceptions. But we don't have a right to our accurate perceptions. Do you begin to see the huge problem? Tommy Mitchell says, this ghostwriter was perfect to write this tripe. G.R. Moringer's father was a drunk, and the ghostwriter had issues with his youth, and he never made amends with his father. Mr. Mouringer has a hatred for his father. Mr. Mouringer is also behind the movie The Tender Bar with Mr. Ben Affleck, starring as an alcoholic. I think Ben Affleck is an alcoholic. It appears that this ghostwriter is trapped in a psychological time warp that he cannot escape and heal from. Harry was a perfect choice for Mr. Mouringer to write for, and of course, Markle could steer him towards deeper psychopathic issues. I have to tell you, Tommy Mitchell, your observations are very shrewd. It was a good fit. I have a lot of compassion for people who have suffered from addiction and who are trying to get better. And as they will tell you in the 12-step program, it is a lifelong process. You are never recovered. You are recovering. The reason why you're never recovered is that you are the problem. So you need to be constantly altering yourself. Now, to an extent, that is true of everybody, because we all have positive and negative, good and bad, constructive and destructive aspects to our personalities. But most of us who are relatively healthy and who gravitate towards positivity and a realistic appreciation of life don't have the struggles that people with these lacunae have, with these massive personality and character defects. Of course, G.R. Mouringer is in some ways a good choice. But in other ways, it's a dangerous choice, because he does have daddy issues. And what he has done is he has turned and allowed Harry to turn his big guns on his family. The reality is, the book could not have been written by somebody like me. First of all, I'm not a ghostwriter, but even if I had been a ghostwriter, somebody like me couldn't write it. That's why Harry's mother and I fell out, because Harry's mother and Harry both have one thing in common. They were quite determined when it suited them, and notice what I have said, when it suited them, to flip the story and lay blame where they would otherwise never have lain it. That's a fact. Had Harry been allowed half in, half out, none of this would be happening. So there is a very opportunistic, cynical, cold, calculating, treacherous, and conscienceless aspect to this whole memoir. Harry needed somebody who had some of the failings, the gaps in their character that Harry has. Now, I have met alcoholics and recovering drug addicts and recovering alcoholics who are decent and who have a moral code. But I have to tell you, I've met an awful lot of them who don't. And I've met very few of them who, when they're on their substance, are anything but totally amoral. That's why they say addicts are very dangerous, because their first loyalty is to their addiction, their second loyalty is to themselves, and they have no great loyalty that I have ever noticed to other people, unless you are providing them with supply. And Harry does have, if what he is presenting is factual, loyalty to Meghan. I say if, because he certainly displays a great loyalty to the leader of the cult. Of course, there are people who say it's good that she's a leader of a cult, because if you substitute one letter, you rarely get what she is. Naughty me. Gina Lowe says, Harry says he has enough material for another book and indicates that it is far worse. Now, if he just said this, then he is not interested in reconciling with his family. He enjoys the attention the book has brought him. He certainly does. That he certainly does. I mean, Meghan and Diana are, and again, I have to bring her into it, because you need to understand what Meghan has done is give Harry permission to replicate the failings of his mother on an international scale and expose them in a way that he would never have done without the encouragement of the leader of the cult. He enjoys the attention the book has brought him, and when that attention begins to wane, he will produce the second book, no matter what. Coming to any occasion correct to the royal family will be used by him to get more material for a later book, video, etc. Do I agree? It's a danger. I have to tell you, I'm going to be careful how I put this. I'm going to be careful how I answer this. But so that you get what I really think, I'm going to say it in my own personal terms. When you're dealing with people like Harry, Meghan, and my mother, they allow you to hope that the leopard is changing or dimming its spots. That's only because at that point in time, they can be covert. As soon as it suits them, they are like the true predators they are. They pounce. I saw my mother do. Listen, my mother tried to burn my face when I was 22 with a lighted cigarette. Why did she do that? Because Susie Knickerbocker had said I was one of the most beautiful girls on earth, which was clearly an exaggeration. But it incensed my mother because she was so competitive and therefore jealous of anybody else who was going to get the attention she demanded for herself, that she tried to destroy her own daughter's face. What's Harry doing? He is figuratively stamping out cigarettes in his brother and sister-in-law and stepmother's, and to an extent father's face, and to the monarchy's face. He's done it countless times in this book. Will he do it again if there is a rapprochement? As long as he's with Meghan, yes. Will he do it if he's not with Meghan? The possibility still exists. The probability may be reduced somewhat because Harry is basically a follower. He says it in the book as well, incidentally. I don't think he realizes what he's admitting, but he says it in the book. He is a follower. The likelihood is if they break up and he survives and he meets someone else and he's in a recovery program and not with a therapist who is going to but a proper therapist, preferably in the 12-step program where somebody can call him out on his BS. Because, I mean, I've never heard of somebody who has the problems he had, knocking back the booze, smoking weed, taking drugs, and think that he's in recovery. I mean, yeah, of course. The reason why, to an extent, the royal family is doing what they're doing is silence is golden. You starve people of the oxygen of attention and, to an extent, publicity. Every time Harry opens up his mouth, the books, the TV shows, everything, he exposes himself more and more. More and more people see we are dealing with not only a mental defective, but a moral defective, in my view. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. I think there is ample evidence that he is morally defective. And the way to occupy the moral high ground is to stay on the moral high ground and hopefully behind the scenes try to get things brought to a more manageable level. But the only way to deal with the Harrys and Meghans of this world is to starve them of the fuel they want you to supply them with. so that they can run their engines to keep, and you need to keep your petrol hose tightly clamped so no fuel is supplied to them. That takes time. But will he be treacherous again? I said to my mother, long before I let her back into my life, I said to her when I was terminating things with her in the early 80s, I said, treachery, my dear woman, is not an accident. It is a character defect. And you are treacherous, and I cannot afford to have you in my life. I went back on it because my children needed grandparents. And with the passage of time, my brother had died, my father had died, my aunt was very old and ill, and I let her back into my life. And my guard was down enough that she was able to steal a beach house in Grand Cayman under my nose and my sister's noses that my aunt had left to us. She was also able to steal and sell for next to nothing the only docking rights to the iron shore in Grand Cayman that was potentially worth a vast amount of money. Treachery, I was absolutely right when I was in my 30s, and I observed to her, treachery is a character defect, and once you have shown that you are treacherous, it does not behoove people who are involved with you to ever think that you cease to be treacherous, because when the incentive is there, you will betray them. You will plunge the knife in. That is what antisocial personality behavior is all about. They don't care about you. They only care about what they want. Anne Smith says, thanks, Lady C. I too noticed that Meghan and Harry were supposedly invited to Prince Andrew's house and then surprised by the Queen stopping in before lunch. Markle wasn't introduced to her lunch host. Pretty sure Andrew's the type to have a huge oil portrait of himself in the foyer. Well, that's very droll. I will actually say that one of the purposes of Spare has been for Harry to use it as a disclaimer of not only his position throughout life, but of Meghan's. The Netflix series, the Spotify broadcasts, the book, they are all revisionist. They are all Meghan and Harry rewriting history, denying what they have said, denying what they have done. Oh, we never said that the royal family was racist, even though they did, even though they accepted an award for it. In the book, J.R. Moringer has allowed Harry to say, and Harry doubtless said, about some of the accusations against Meghan, including that she was a yacht girl. That's right. It's mentioned in the book. Harry knows only too well that it has received wide publicity. Whether it is true or not is beside the point. That Meghan used to entertain as a yacht girl. Now, I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it happened. But I am saying that version of events is out there. Harry knows it. Harry also knows a version of events is out there that Meghan was on Jeffrey Epstein's yacht with Prince Andrew. There are versions of events out there which I will not repeat the details of, which are very concerning to Harry and to Meghan, with links to Prince Andrew via Jeffrey Epstein. Is this an attempt to silence the speculation that indeed Meghan knew Prince Andrew before she ever met Prince Harry? Well, you figure it out for yourself. I know what I think. It is totally gratuitous, the story. It doesn't make sense. It is obfuscating because it shifts the premise to the fact that, oh, Meghan never Googled me. I know that sometimes when people want to bury one story, they come up with another. And I think, yes, I think there are very good reasons for why that story has been included in the book. Even though it's insensible, doesn't make sense, it's stupid, it could open them to mockery, but it serves the purpose. Oh, Harry could never, Meghan never met Andrew. Meghan didn't know what Andrew looked like. So Meghan can't have been on the yacht with Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. Therefore, Meghan can't have been a yacht girl. That's, in my opinion, one of the possible rationales for why that story has been included in the book. I could be wrong. If I am, I'm the first one who will be happy to admit I was wrong, but that is a reasonable hypothesis. Maria W4880 says, Lady C, the last episode was one of your best. My question to you, and she has several questions. 1. Do the royals have a game plan? Before this book was sold, you mentioned that certain truths will come to light. Is this still the case? Yes. The truth is going to emerge. I can tell you, I know as a fact the truth is going to emerge. You just have to exercise patience. It will emerge later this year. Oh, do the royals have a game plan? Yes, they do. They're trying to bring this whole mockery to an acceptable end without Harry and Meghan doing further damage to the royal family, the British people, the monarchy, the Commonwealth. But it's a flexible game plan because they're dealing with two people who have no scruples, no boundaries, really no conscience in terms of what the effects they have upon other people. And as I said about my mother, Harry does the same thing. couching dirty deeds with cloaking dirty deeds with noble motives. You know, his latest spiel is that he is going to be protecting Charlotte and Louis by creating this havoc now. Yes, Harry, we believe you. One tear from the left eye at a time. And may I say, I know as a fact that the emergence of the truth is not a part of the royals' game plan. That's right. It's not a part of their game plan. More than that, I'm not prepared to say at this point. Number 2, some perceive Harry as Charles as being a weak king. Is this a ruse to get the Sussex's guard down? Is Charles a weak king? I think we need to have some compassion for him. I don't think he's being a weak king. I think he is trying to be as honourable and decent a king and a man as he can be. And he has conflicting loyalties. And it is a very complex situation where virtually anything he does is going to have undesirable effects, and therefore he is being as measured as he can be. And make no mistake about it, though, he's not quite the pushover that you might think he is. Not quite the pushover. He's got far more metal than you can imagine. Look at how he made sure that nobody separated him from Camilla. When his back is against the wall, he will come out fighting. And as I said with the late Queen, I'm going to say with him, patience. The royal family has to not only do the right thing, but be seen to do the right thing and be seen to be honourable. And there are laws and there are protocols and there are decencies that need to be factored into how they function. Number 3, regarding the Taliban, have there been actual repercussions here? Is Harry in hiding? He's so paranoid. I can totally imagine him bunkering down. Regarding the Taliban, are there actual repercussions here? Obviously, any threats that are made threats that will be factored into the equation by the powers that be. Of course, they're not going to go public with them if they existed. And therefore, if I knew that there were threats that had been made, not general threats, specific threats, I wouldn't be repeating them either. But the fact of the matter is, Harry's paranoia, and he is paranoid, but it's very self-serving. Harry would like to get IPP status restored, so the American government has to pay for his security and Meghan's security. So there is a very cynical element to it. And I have to tell you, just as how I noticed with my mother, I noticed with Harry and with Meghan, no matter how irrational their behavior appears to be, It's always remarkably self-serving, which leads you to believe that there may be madness involved, but you also have to ask yourself, at what point does madness end and self-interest begin? And self-interest at that level is badness. It's very destructive. 4. The elite seem to be shying away from him. Not one famous person, beside interviewers, has publicly supported them. Do Meghan and Harry think this book was a success and losing their popularity was worth it? Or do they see their plummeting popularity not worth the money? Oh my dear, their plummeting popularity is offset by the reactions of their paid supporters and their paid PRs, and they are in bed with a very, very rich and powerful publishing company, which is using its PR as well. So, to massage the issue so that any failure is converted into an apparent success. And they have the perfect defense against their rising unpopularity. We are evil. Anybody who doesn't bow down and worship at the altar of the goddess Meghan and her chief follower, Harry, otherwise known as Oedipus Bates, is an evil person. There's nothing wrong with them. We are the ones who are misguided. Mopo 3932 says, Hi Lady C, Harry's claim that there's just as much truth in what I remember and how I remember it as there is in so-called objective facts is the classic premise of The Villains of Atlas Shrugged, the novel by Ayn Rand. You have previously mentioned this author's apt analyses. Thank you. The danger posed by Harry's pea-brain is not pea-sized. It certainly isn't. Atlas Shrugged is one of the great novels of the 20th century. It is one of the truly immoral novels of the 20th century, with a very moral purpose, a very moral message, and a very necessary message. Evil often poses as good, but evil remains evil, and the effects are sometimes apparently positive, but invariably in the long run destructive and negative. There are huge moral issues concerned with much of what we do in life. If you do not have a strong moral code, it is very easy to stray into dangerous and destructive terrain and to find yourself exposed to and captivated by evil. We need to understand that every day we encounter evil in our lives in small ways. Often we don't notice it, which is good because it means it's not bothering us. But when it is so in your face, when it is on a global scale, when you have destructive people taking pot shots at human beings who are trying their best within the parameters of acceptability and decency to do a good job, and they are making it as difficult for them as possible, we need to understand that we need to exercise moral rigor and vigor. This is more than just a deluded, greedy, nasty, envious, destructive, disturbed individual. This is somebody who has surrendered himself to the forces of destructiveness and is trying to pretend that he is an advocate of constructiveness, and he might even believe it. I would suggest those of you who want to know more on the subject, read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And if you can't be bothered, I leave you with this simple thought which encapsulates the whole thing in 1 or 2 sentences. Remember that Adolf Hitler thought he was doing the world a favor. That's right. He thought he was a power for good. So was Joseph Stalin, and so did Joseph Stalin think he was doing good and was a power for good. 2 of the greatest monsters of the 20th century both thought they were doing good. They did. I mean, we can see they're crazy. We can see the destructiveness. In the 1930s, nobody saw how destructive Joseph Stalin was. Nobody. Except a few very alert people. Hitler was more apparent because he made the mistake up front of introducing the Nuremberg laws. Had he not done that, the outcome would have been entirely different. History teaches us lessons if we care to learn from it. The choice is ours. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, keep the questions and comments coming in. You are an absolutely essential and fundamental part of this process, and this cannot be done without your involvement. God bless and goodbye.